Hey, what's going on, you guys? Thank you for joining me on the Business Shola video blog here. And today I just want to shine the light on this broad here, the representative for Arizona, and give her the award of dropping the ball. And basically, today is doomsday where we're getting prepared for a bill to get passed this Friday called the Inflation Reduction Act, and which is basically going to do the opposite of what it's intended to do. See, this bill is supposed to be part of the Build Back Better bill, and it was also used to be part of the stimulus act, and this is just a remnants of all that failure. And now we're going to a new marketing name called the Inflation Reduction Act, in which it's supposed to bring in money for the country to pay off our debts, and it's supposed to actually tax the rich. However, instead, this representative got bought by the equity firms, and yeah, basically the rich of the rich, in which the wealthy get to keep their tax loopholes. And instead, we give the IRS a bunch of money to start taxing Americans who make under $200,000. But I'm not gonna get ahead of myself. I'm gonna let you hear it from Clear Value Tax, in which he breaks down what you need to know about this bill. So stay tuned.
The name of this bill is the Inflation Reduction Act. The governments, they're going to spend about $500 billion. So my question to you is, do you think that this is going to increase inflation, decrease inflation, or is it going to have minimal effect? But I'm going to give you all sides of the arguments. Now let's go over the arguments that this bill will decrease inflation. So the story goes like this. The government, they're going to spend about $500 billion. However, that's going to bring in new tax money, and it's going to save the government money somewhere in the range of $800 billion in total. So that's going to leave the governments a surplus of $300 billion. They're going to come out ahead by that amount. With that $300 billion, the government, they're going to be able to decrease the federal deficit. So that's going to reduce inflation. Now let's make the argument that this bill will increase inflation. So the government, they're going to spend about $500 billion. $80 billion of that is going to go to the IRS. The IRS, they're going to spend $45 billion to audit more Americans. And supposedly, by doing so, they're going to rake in an additional $204 billion. So is that guaranteed that they're successfully going to collect an additional $204 billion by auditing more Americans? So the answer is, of course not. That is not guaranteed. So for all we know, they can spend $45 billion auditing Americans and only collecting $50 billion. So the numbers, these are just projections. The government is saying by implementing that 15% corporate minimum tax, they're going to collect an additional $100 billion. Is that guaranteed? No, it's not, because the corporations, we don't know how they're going to respond, we don't know how they're going to react, and they might be able to come up with other loopholes to avoid paying those taxes. So the government is saying that Medicare, they're going to be able to negotiate drug prices, and that's going to save the government close to $300 billion. First of all, those negotiations, they start in 4 years. And those negotiations, they're going to start on 10 drugs. And we don't even know how the negotiations are going to go. Therefore, what the government is talking about, the additional tax money that they're going to collect, or the additional savings that they're going to experience, it may not pan out as they're forecasting, as they're predicting. So a lot of people are saying these are pretty loose estimates, and there's just so many unknowns, there's so many variables, and these numbers might be off. If things do not go according to plan, then the government, they're going to spend more money, and then they're going to add to the country's deficit, and this would increase inflation. Another argument is that this bill will have minimal impact, basically no impact on inflation. So you have to remember, that $300 billion surplus, that's going to be spread out over many years. Just to put that into perspective for you, this year alone, the federal government, they're going to spend about $2 trillion more than they have coming in. So $2 trillion, $300 billion spread out over many years. That's most likely not going to have a big impact on inflation, one way or the other. So let me know your opinions down below. So do you think that this bill will increase inflation, decrease inflation, or is it going to have minimal impact? Anyways, this bill, it passed in the Senate just a few days ago. All the Democrats, they voted in favor. All the Republicans, they voted against. So the bill, it's now moving forward to the House of Representatives, and the House, they're going to vote on it on Friday. It is expected to pass because the Democrats, they can pass it without a single Republican vote. They don't need any of the Republicans. And then President Biden, he's expected to sign it over the weekend after the Friday vote in the House. The Democrats, they used their reconciliation opportunity on this bill. This is what the stimulus bill it morphed into. So this is actually the remnants or modified version of the Build Back Better. Therefore, there is not going to be any more stimulus. The IRS, they're going to receive an extra $80 billion. So that's a lot of money. To put that into perspective for you, the IRS annual budget is $12.6 billion a year. So this is going to be a nice pay bump for them. They will be required to spend $45 billion on auditing more Americans. I really want you to understand this because they are not going to be using that money to target wealthy Americans. They're going to target Americans making under $200,000 a year. That is not my prediction. This is what the government said. So, don't do anything crazy on your tax return this year. In order for this bill to pass, all 50 Democratic senators, they needed to vote yes, which they did. However, Democratic Senator Kyrsten Sinema, she was against raising taxes. So the Democrats, they needed her vote, so they had to negotiate with her. The Democrats, they wanted to close many tax loopholes for the wealthy. So closing those loopholes, that was supposed to help pay for this bill. But to win over Sinema's votes, they had no choice. They decided not to, just to make her happy. So these tax loopholes, they are still available to the wealthy. I have to tell you about this. The top federal income tax rate is 37%. Investment managers, they are paying a maximum tax rate of 23.8%. That's because of a loophole called carried interest. So that's pretty wild if you think about it, because you have an investment manager that's making tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're paying a tax rate of 23.8%. So did you know, if you're an everyday American working an everyday job, if you make $89,000 a year, you're in the 24% tax bracket. So 24%. And then you have investment managers that are paying 23.8%. So Sinema fought for this, and she ended up getting what she wanted. Also, the 15% minimum tax on corporations, it will not be applicable to corporations owned by private equity firms. So they're exempt. So that was the deal to get Sinema's votes. So many other tax loopholes for the wealthy, they're going to remain open. Many exemptions were added for certain types of corporations. So investment managers and private equity firms, you don't have to worry, you're good. Sinema took care of you.